I'm going to be totally honest with you. I am worried about where humanity is heading. There are 7 trends happening in our world right now that I think all blend together to create a genuinely terrifying vision of the not too distant future. It starts with social media. Now, maybe it's just me, but every single time that I leave an Instagram scrolling session, I don't feel good. Partly because I've just spent 20 minutes doing nothing productive, but mostly because what I've spent my time looking at is how good other people are. How good other people look, how good their holidays are, how good their singing voice is. No one wants to share the things that they're embarrassed about. Humans are actually wired to seek social validation and status. And so 99% of what you see on social media is just a highlight reel. You want to use it because the social media gives you a very short-term high from being able to vicariously experience the best parts of other people's lives, but the consequence of doing so is that when you then return to your own, you're going to feel like something's missing. And then there's the other side to it. Social media gives us the ability to effectively rewrite our lives. Like, if you're proud of your career, you will post about your job promotion. If you want to seem like an avid traveler, you will post that photo of you lounging on a beach under the guise that this is just a normal day in your life. And to show how adventurous you are, you will post that crazy beautiful sunset that you saw by hiking to the top of a mountain, maybe even editing it along the way to make it seem more vibrant than it was. I mean, just look at TikTok filters. The reason this app is so successful is that it basically gives users a limitless toolkit to make them the funniest and hottest versions of themselves for everyone else to see. It lets them tell the story they want to tell. And so when you combine this idea that you can literally remake yourself online with the feeling that you kind of have to keep up with how great everyone else's lives apparently are, you can see how it makes us so unbelievably insecure about our real lives, jealous and just not as happy as we could be. We've gone from comparing our imperfect lives to the imperfect lives of the 5-6 neighbors around us, to now comparing our imperfect lives to a curated compilation of the most perfect moments from a much wider pool of people. And that's a battle you can never win. But where this starts to get much more alarming is through number 2, a phenomenon called echo chambers. Put simply, it's not just the other users on social media that you have to worry about. The entire objective of the apps themselves is also not aligned with your own. The primary goal of every single app you use is simple. How do we keep you on for as long as possible? Because that's how they extract the most value from you. Whether that's Amazon wanting you to buy more things, or Facebook wanting you to scroll past as many ads as possible, retention time is key. And think about it. What's the best way of getting someone to stay on your app? Send them down a rabbit hole. Make absolute sure that when someone opens Amazon, you have the most personalized recommendations waiting for them. That when someone opens Instagram, you have a tailored selection of the posts and stories that will keep them scrolling for the longest. Apps are getting better and better at learning about their users and then using that information to deliver them similar content made for them. And in the short term, this makes our lives easier. It means that you can get content you want without needing to even search for anything. But long term, I think it's changing people. Let's say that I'm shopping for a new pair of shoes, and I come across a video where someone tells me that Nike is better than Adidas. Let's say I watch that whole video because I'm interested, I want to know the right shoe to get, and at the end, I find myself agreeing with this person. Well, as the days go on, YouTube, realizing that I now have a preference, and I will be more likely to click a video that is pro-Nike because it fits with my current worldview, will serve me more and more pieces of content that reinforce this. And my preference gets stronger. Soon enough, I'm a fan. I start following Twitter accounts that are pro-Nike. I start tweeting out pro-Nike tweets to the point where the other pro-Nike supporters find my page, follow me, and start commenting on my post telling me how right I am. My purchase history becomes full of Nike. Because platforms like Amazon know that they'll get a better click-through rate if they show me Nike. And before long, through them, I'm no longer just buying their shoes, but also their t-shirts, their shorts, their entire lineup, and I'm so unbelievably sure that I'm making the right decision by supporting Nike that I won't even listen to another outside opinion at this point. If someone even thinks to tell me that Adidas shoes are better, well, they can go eat a foot. Abstract example, yes, but can you see what's happening? Just based off an off-chance encounter with one video, I've been funneled into feeling so strongly about something that I would probably be unbearable to someone who didn't feel the same way. I've been funneled into feeling like I'm in a separate group to someone who has a different opinion. But what's kind of alarming about that is that online, that's okay. The internet increasingly has the power to be able to filter out the things that might contradict how you think, and at the same time surround you with content that reinforces your opinions. And it will, because it has an incentive to. Everyone online is in their own little bubble of information and opinions, and they're basically just getting pushed in whichever direction keeps them engaged and earns platforms the most money. This is why social media platforms are getting rid of single shared homepages, and any place where you might not be getting the most targeted content. Why would they show you generalized videos that are less likely to appeal to you and therefore more likely to make you leave their platform? And so shoes is one thing, but this polarization becomes important when you start talking about real-world issues: politics, abortion, climate change, nuclear power, and I think for a lot of it, it is damaging our ability to see other points of view and compromise. So that's one part of it. But what I reckon makes echo chambers even more harmful to society is that for the vast majority of content that we're being funneled into reading and watching, there is a strong incentive for point 3, it to be negative. See, as humans, we are programmed to treat negative information as more important than positive information. Potentially because in our past, negative info would be things like a predator that we had to respond to immediately. And so I guarantee you that if right now I dropped 2 videos, one telling you why Samsung is doing a great job, and the other telling you why Samsung is failing, the failing one will be clicked on at least twice as much. This is the simple reason why most of the news that we find ourselves being served is negative. And as a result of this, I worry that it's not just that people are being funneled into strong viewpoints, it's that we're being funneled into strongly negative viewpoints. But the cherry on top of all this is point 4, the false sense of confidence that the internet provides. Introducing the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a really common phenomenon where people overestimate how much they understand things they don't understand at all. You actually find that if you plot a graph of someone's confidence in their knowledge against their actual ability, you get a U-shape. Or in other words, people who know almost nothing think that there's almost nothing to know, and that therefore they know what they need to know. People who know an intermediate amount will know enough to know how much it is out there that they don't know. And then you get the actual experts who both know how much there is to know and actually do know a lot. This Dunning-Kruger effect has existed since humanity started. But the reason that I'm talking about it here is that the internet and the echo chambers it creates can enhance its presence. Think about it. If I have no interest in learning about a particular subject, because let's say I feel like I know it already, the internet will never serve it to me. If I think the Earth is flat, I will never see content that contradicts this because I'm less likely to engage with it. On the internet, it's not just that we're able to constantly surround ourselves with people who agree with us, but the side effect of this is that we can also distance ourselves from people who disagree with us. And so all those correctional mechanisms that exist in a normal in-person society, like local friends telling you that you're being dumb or that you just haven't considered another point of view, they're falling away. We have the power all of a sudden to, when we feel like it, avoid being told that we're wrong, leading to not just extreme, negative, polarized viewpoints on topics that we don't fully understand, but also an even higher, inflated sense of confidence in those viewpoints. You might be starting to see where I'm going with all this. I can see a future where people carry not just absolute black and white us versus them opinions, thanks to echo chambers, but also that they'll be easily frustrated by others who disagree because of how confident they are that they're right and how negatively they've been funneled into thinking about the other side. All while at the same time, thanks to social media, insecure enough in their own lives that they actually feel like they want to take others down a peg. And where this leads us, this distaste towards others, combined with the ability to achieve more social validation from our bedrooms than by actually seeing people, is I think point 5, isolation. And if you are enjoying this video, then a sub to the channel would be unifying. When you really think about it, our smart devices in general are getting so good at doing stuff that we barely need other people anymore. We don't need grandma's famous passion fruit pie recipe. I can instantly find the highest rated pie on the internet. We don't need friends to get opinions from when we have Facebook groups that are tailored to giving us the answers we want to hear. We don't need to stop and ask someone for directions. Google Maps is just more reliable. And by the same reasoning, I'm 100% certain that AI will one day do most of our jobs. Drones will be able to make deliveries faster than we can. Cars will be able to drive themselves more diligently without us. Robots will be able to clean more thoroughly. AI switchboards will be more methodical than call centers, and even large parts of the jobs of lawyers and doctors and, hell, even influencers. They just boil down to pattern recognition, and so computers will outlearn us one day. And remember, as soon as one AI has figured out how to do something, like let's say be an influencer, they'll never need to be taught a second time. Instead of with humans, where getting a new person up to speed with a job needs them to go to school for 15 years, then university, then training, the minute that a machine becomes able to do the same task, you can literally just copy and paste that data to as many machines as you want in minutes. I could see it making portions of the workforce redundant one chunk at a time. The point is though, I can see us moving towards a future where even as people, our need for other people and our desire for other people will fall. Don't get me wrong, this tech around us is incredible. I have no doubt that past generations would have been in absolute awe at what we can do now, but I think that's actually kind of the problem because we're not in awe. Every single person that I've ever met is very much adjusted to the technology in our lives. Each time a new wave of kids is born, that's a wave of people who completely take for granted every bit of innovation up until that point, and can only naturally think about what's next. This is actually a necessary part of our brains. It's known as hedonic adaptation, where we are built to accept new standards and then return to the same level of base happiness regardless of them. We're made like this so we can continue to have just a stable emotional equilibrium. But the thing is, while the tech improves dramatically each year, humans and the level of stimulation, the dopamine hit that we can provide to each other, are relatively fixed. And so if each generation we're adjusting to the new level of stimulation that the current era of tech can provide, it's not that the tech is going to start feeling better and making us happier, it's that the humans around us will just start to feel worse by comparison. I've actually started noticing a few examples of this in my own life recently.
Like, just a few months ago, WhatsApp released an update that allows you to listen to people's voice notes at 1.5 times and even 2 times speed.
And on one hand, what a great feature. Now we can get even more done. Except, imagine how it's going to feel now going from that to then trying to have an in-person conversation with these same contacts. You'd fall asleep. You'll get so used to them talking faster, delivering information to you quicker, and so relative to that, the real-life version of them is actually not as interesting to you. Or for another example, video games. When the pandemic lockdown started, like a lot of people I know, my friends and I started playing a game with each other. Once a week, we'd log on at the same time, we'd plug our headsets in, and play together. And I'm not trying to knock it. We actually had some of the greatest ever shared moments of our entire friendship within this game. We worked together, we overcame challenges, we had great chats while we played. But then I noticed something interesting. That even as lockdown started coming to an end and people were allowed to meet again, I didn't feel the need as much. Like, why would I spend a full day traveling back and forth 250 miles to be able to have a conversation with people that I could have a perfectly good conversation with from my bedroom, whilst also being immersed in this highly stimulating video game with multiple interlocking systems to keep me engaged at all times? Or, the other thing I've noticed is online shopping. Now, I get that there is still a good proportion of people out there who swear by the in-person experience. But if you look at the demographics, young people now are very much of the opinion that all shopping should be online. And I have no doubt that most babies who have just been born, they're not even going to consider shopping in person. It won't make sense to them. Like, why would they walk to an in-person shop when they can tap a few keys? Why would they browse through 1,000 things they don't want when they can literally type the exact word of what they're looking for? Why would they want to queue up and carry around their physical shopping bags all day when they can get them dropped to their doorstep later that afternoon? These are just some of the many examples of how I think we're already beginning to isolate, and I can only see this increasing. I already look around at so many restaurants and public places and I see like 4 friends sitting together, but each one has a phone held to their face. So obviously in that moment, whatever app it is they're using has gotten so sophisticated, so good at its job, that it's managing to provide more value than their closest friends who are literally sitting in front of them. This isn't my opinion. There is so much data to show that time spent on the internet each year is flying, and that it's almost directly negatively correlated with time spent in person. And you could say, well, Aaron, if you want to go see people, go see people. And to some extent you're right. On an individual level, no one's stopping anyone from meeting. But on a societal level, I think that the institutions for seeing people are falling apart. Meetings are going digital, workplaces are dissolving, music concerts are now appearing within video games instead of in halls. Hell, even smartphone launch events, I used to go to tons of them, have now boiled down to just a pre-recorded video by a company that is dropped onto their YouTube channel. And this is not me saying that these are bad decisions. Technically speaking, they make sense. They're logical. Like, why would a company risk messing up a live in-person presentation when they can pre-record something, edit it, and make sure it's perfect? Why would you make people waste time going into work when they can do their job from their living room? I'm not saying that isolation is being forced upon us. It's actually scarier than that. It's that we are choosing isolation, because as the tech improves, isolation makes our lives easier, less embarrassing, and more efficient. So, if you combine the 5 key things we've talked about so far, the jealousy, polarization, negativity, confidence, as well as the lack of incentive to physically see the people around us, I think it leads us to point 6. Chaos. You've probably heard of cancel culture, right? Thousands of angry people projecting their voices to actively try and ruin someone else's life, usually someone who's considered to be successful. Well, if you think about it, this is pretty much the natural conclusion of everything we've talked about so far. All you have to do is to log on to Twitter, and every single day you will find a trending topic that people are verbally molesting each other over. Two sides with completely different views who not just disagree, but seem to strongly want harm to come to the other party. And it's not like one side ever wins in these situations and everyone bursts into song and dance. No one can win in an argument where neither will even consider the other's viewpoint. Everyone involved is just left unsatisfied with a bitter taste in the mouth. And what I think amplifies this chaos is that more and more, it's becoming really hard to know what's real and what's not. This is both one of the most impressive but also horrifying aspects of modern day technology. Through the power of deep fakes, you can make public figures look like they're saying things they never said. You can have photos of events that never occurred. You can frame people for things they never did. It already requires specialized teams to be able to discern real from fake. I don't think it'll be long before the line between them starts to blur. Like, earlier this year, millions of viewers across South Korea were tuning into their local news channel, like they always do. The usual presenter, Kim Joo-ha, was there, like you'd expect, just kind of talking through the top stories, lots of virus-related ones, as you can probably imagine. But Kim Joo-ha wasn't there. She had in fact been replaced by a deep fake version of her that could perfectly mimic her facial expressions and gesticulations. And we soon realized this was not a one-time replacement. In a completely virtual world, it'll be impossible to know what's real and what isn't. And to some extent, what's even harder to think about is that it might not even matter to you. The more that your life exists online, the more that your world becomes just whatever news you agree with, whatever videos keep you watching the longest, whatever social media posts that reaffirm your own life decisions. Or in other words, the more you rely on algorithms that have no interest in the truth or education or self-betterment, but just to keep scrolling. And so, where all of this leads us is that our technology is more advanced and more capable of helping us than ever, but our self-reported happiness is falling. We have the highest rates of wealth we've ever had, the lowest rates of poverty, and yet more protests and unrest than almost any prior phase of humanity. And I'm not saying that protests are a bad thing. Sometimes it's the only way for people to feel like they have a voice, but in almost all cases where there's a protest, it's because there's a disagreement. And I can't see us disagreeing less going forward. If we carry on like this, I think we're moving towards an unstable world, one of extreme levels of political correctness, unwarranted levels of confidence, one where no one will admit they're wrong, but very few actually know the truth, one where people can turn on you in an instant, where tensions are always high, and instead of self-reflection, people turn to damaging others as a way to vent their own internal dissatisfaction. In case it wasn't clear, I'm nervous about the future of our society. But that brings me on to number 7. Surveillance. We are in a technology revolution. Tech is accelerating and rocketing and spiraling in all sorts of directions, and no one really wants it to stop, right? Better tech means more exciting goods to buy, a more efficient economy, better healthcare, a more effective military. But at the same time, as our lives start to become digital, our hobbies digital, our relationships digital, our crimes digital, companies and governments are going to want to regulate in a way that I think we've never seen before. Did you see that Apple policy update that they announced a few months ago? That they were going to start scanning images from your Apple devices to see if any of them matched with records of child abuse victims. If there were matches, they said that they will flag your account to law enforcement for quite possibly being a child abuser. And you could say, well, of course, just don't abuse children. That's an easy one to get behind. But can you see how this is potentially a slippery slope? What if in the future, governments start pressuring companies to police not just crimes, but also just behaviors that they don't want? What if you could get arrested just because you Googled something you were curious about because that search was attributed to you being a risk factor to society? That sounds extreme, but this is kind of happening in China now. China already has a system where citizens are being rated based on the good things they do, at least as far as the government's concerned, and the bad things they do. And by bad things, I'm not talking about things like committing a crime, I'm talking crossing the road in the wrong place, or playing your music too loud in public. In China right now, behaving in a way that is even slightly suboptimal to society can literally affect your rights, your ability to book flights, board trains, access healthcare, the price you pay to buy things. And you could say, well, that's just China, but the fact of it is, the core parts of the system are already in place in a lot of countries. You don't have a good credit rating, you're not getting a loan. You don't have a good Uber score, you're not getting a lift. You don't have top grades, you're not getting a place at university. Systems like this, from a macro perspective, allow society to run more efficiently. Yes, China has an extreme level of population control, but it's only possible because of how close they've gotten to their technology. And we're only getting closer. We're moving well beyond the age where a computer is just this big box that sits under your desk. We're moving towards ambient computing, an era where everything we use is a computer and everything is connected all the time, collecting data to optimize itself. And something I think about quite a lot is that isn't it just a little bit alarming that almost every piece of software on these computing devices is becoming closed source, meaning that the code of how it's working, what it's collecting, is being hidden? And the fact that as these computers get more and more sophisticated, an average user is going to have less and less idea of what exactly they're doing. Or to put it another way, in the same way that machines and algorithms are starting to outcompete us in terms of our ability to entertain people, I also think we're at risk of being outcompeted when it comes to capability. That one day the microcomputers around us, with their ability to assimilate data and keep learning and share information with each other, will become so advanced that an average user will not even try to comprehend them, and instead just accept that they exist and use them for their benefits. I realise this sounds very eye-rolly and almost conspiracy theory level, but just look at Facebook. All the average user thinks about is, yeah, I just got a friend request from X, or, person Y just liked my post, this is so great. But the truth of it is, this is a hyper-intelligent piece of software, designed by some of the smartest minds on the planet to manipulate prehistoric parts of our mind towards behaving in a way that's conducive to profit. The point is, as the tech becomes more sophisticated, so will the way we're being watched by it. And the higher the chance that the tech becomes so complex and nuanced that it will be able to run circles around us and our own limited brain capacities. I can see tech concentrating the balance of power towards the limited few who own it and understand it, leaving the vast majority of the population bickering amongst each other below them, but never really seeing the bigger picture. The future is going to be a real game of who do you trust? Because when the mechanisms of the technology are incomprehensible to an average citizen, you've got no choice but to trust someone who does understand it. I don't want that to be the end though. I don't just want to make a really gloomy prediction and then dip. Technology can save lives, it can bring happiness, it can unite families, it can inspire. Tech has been my single main passion ever since I was like 13 years old. And so this video is not me trying to say it's not exciting, because it is. But what I am trying to say is that I do think it's worth taking a step back every now and again to remind ourselves what's happening behind the scenes. That if you feel like your life isn't good enough because of what you see on social media, that's not just you. I feel like that half the time. That if you feel incredibly strongly about something that you know you're not an expert in, consider what's made you come to those conclusions and why. That if you feel bad because you've just wasted 2 hours watching TikTok videos about life hacks that probably don't work, that's not you being chronically unproductive, that's TikTok being very good at its job. And also, you're not alone. The final note that I want to leave this on is that while I'm not a psychologist by any means, I do think that there's one thing we can all do to remedy a lot of the traps that the internet and technology can set for us. And that's gratitude. I think just taking a simple moment every now and again to be grateful can refocus us on what things and people really matter, can avoid that jealousy and self-loathing that social media can fuel, can fight our instincts that we just want to accept all the progress we made in this world, and instead allow us to reappreciate how incredible it actually is. And on that note, to check out 25 inventions that are completely out of this world, click here. Or for my full review of the latest iPhone, that's here. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.